I've never done that.
You've never recorded?
No. Morning, Nikki.
Morning.
Now the brush. That's a nasty brush. No, I'll take it.
Sorry, I thought you had one out there. All right, we're just going to wait a few minutes to see how many people we get joining us. We still have a minute till 8:15. Lindsay, did you pick up the dress down money from Friday yet?
I have not.
Okay, I have $2 more that were turned in. I'm just going to put them in the slot.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, I know.
Okay, I'm gonna wait. Hi, Teresa.
Good morning.
I'm gonna wait about another minute and then we'll get started. There are still people joining us.
Oh. You want to come over and say hello? Come here. Oh. Do you want to say hi real quick? Say hi. Say hi.
Oh my.
He's getting big.
Heck yeah. Remind me of his name?
Ace. Flying Ace.
That's right.
Love it.
It's hard enough to remember all the kids' names. Now we're remembering all the dog names. It's a lot.
Aw.
You do pretty well with it, though.
Yes.
All right. So in the interest of your time, we're going to get started, and I will continue to let people in as they arrive. So welcome to our first coffee and conversation of this school year. What we have found from having Zoom meetings is we have a lot more participation than when we have meetings in person. So even though this COVID environment has really thrown us into a tailspin, it's kind of nice to have these meetings via Zoom because obviously you can attend from the comfort of your home or office, and we get to see or hear from a lot more of you. So that's been an unexpected delight amongst a lot of not so delighting things. So welcome. And then at the end, when we open it up to any questions that you have, kind of a town hall format, please let us know if there's anything that you would really like to have us talk about next time at Coffee and Conversation. I think our next session is in December sometime. I don't know off the top of my head, but if there's something that's a burning issue for you that you would like us to talk about next time, please let us know.
It's December 9th.
Pardon me?
December 9th.
December 9th.
Oh,
Mrs. Burns is the keeper of our calendar, and she keeps us all on track. So I'm going to share my screen because we do have a presentation, and then we will open it up for you guys. Hold on. I got to find what I'm looking for. Okay, Mrs. Pottinger, come over here. Okay, I already have pulled up across. How do I get what I want? That's what I want. All right. Can you guys see my shared screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thanks, Mrs. Pottinger. So obviously today is October 21st, and in the newsletter I said we were going to talk about COVID-19, we're going to talk about health and safety, and then virtual learning, and then we'll open it up for you guys. So I just wanted to give you some background about why we decided to open for in-person learning. So on June 30th, Governor Whitmer did publish her Safe Start Return to Learn roadmap for all of Michigan schools and school districts. And in that roadmap, she and the team that she put together identified ways that schools could open safely. So we followed all the required protocols in that roadmap. Hold on. Now I have to move this over.
Then you just have to hit arrow.
Okay.
If you click that back, we'll make it just one square.
Okay. So I can't do it that way. I have to see you guys while I'm doing it. So we put together a preparedness plan that's on the website, and we implemented all the required protocols. Well, then we were sent into a kind of a tailspin when first Fenton decided to be 100% virtual, and then Holly decided to be 100% virtual. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, for a few sleepless nights, I was in a quandary. You know, I know that we're following all the protocols. I know that this governor's task force says that we can open. Yet Fenton and Holly are going virtual. If we open for in-person, are our parents going to think that we don't care about kids' health? All those things go through your minds as you're trying to decide what's the best thing to do for, at that time, about 640 kids. So obviously, we work as a team, and the two Jens and Mr. Kander and I had many, many conversations. And with some information from the health department, we decided that we would open for in-person learning. So at that time, the risk for elementary kids, and still really at this time, is small. And that there's strong capacity in the hospitals for beds for COVID. And at the time we opened, hospitalizations were on the decline. So we took all those things into consideration, and how passionate we are about having students in the building, and we opened. So 7 weeks later, I'm so glad that we made that decision. We have had 6 full weeks of no COVID positive student cases. We did get our first case last week, and the whole Oakland County Health Department really helped us do contract tracing through that case, and really a minimal amount of students and staff members were affected. But we have had several students quarantined because they're close contacts of a positive case. And as you know, well, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but there's a lot of disconnect between 10 days isolation, 14 days quarantine, and it's really become it's case by case what you do for these probable and confirmed cases. So if you've been watching the newsletter, we have to publish our probable and confirmed cases. And what I did for 2 weeks was tell you if a student went home and what happened to that student. And I did it student by student. And then the health department tells us that we do not have to be that in the weeds, that we can just put a cumulative amount of probable or confirmed cases. So that's what we started to do. Also, we've been very blessed to have assigned to us 2 RNs from the Oakland County Health Division, and they walk us through every scenario, and they are very responsive. They visit us in person about once a week, and we call them all the time, and we email them frequently, probably at least once, maybe twice a day. So I feel like we have, over the last 7 weeks, really become adept at what to do in all these different scenarios. And if we don't know, then we contact our RNs. So I'm going to hand it off to Jen Burns. Whoopsie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about the health and safety. I just want everyone to be aware of like the protocols that Holly Academy has done on their own to make sure we stay safe here at HA. Staff members are temperature checked every morning. They must wear their mask at all times other than eating and drinking. So we arrive here, the administration, at 7 a.m. and we start checking in our teachers arrive, and we have our temperature checks. We have a clipboard that we mark, and they also have to fill out like a survey that they do not have symptoms. They do that every morning. All students now, young 5 through 8, must now wear a mask at all times in the building. Except for when they're eating and drinking. And we do have scheduled, all teachers had to give us a new copy of their schedule that shows that they take mask breaks every hour on the hour. And you'll see them walking around the building, taking, breaths of fresh air. Yesterday we had a fire drill, so we had to work that through. We had 2 separate ones so we could social distance on the way out. And some of our kids stayed outside so that way they could really have a nice mask break. So all students, I said that all students are cohorted and only interact with their cohort inside the building. What that means is we do not switch classes. They are with their class all the way through. That includes any other things we might do, special education. They're cohorted. They're not brought in with different students from different classrooms. So the whole building stays within their cohort and the teachers come to them. That would include specials. Students use hand sanitizers each time they leave the classroom, before and after. We have everything set up throughout the building. And we do hand washing that it takes place every 2 to 3 hours. Most of the elementary classrooms have sneeze guards, and I think I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail with our student that did have COVID with the sneeze guards and how we had it set up. That really protected a lot of our students to be able to remain in class. So I was very happy, it paid for itself, by having students remain here in school. We have them in most of the classrooms. In recess, we do not all go out. We might have the same recess time at 11 a.m., but we also have different places, different zones that we have made for our teachers, and they rotate through the zones. So if like, say, Mrs. Bunyak's class is on the playground at 11 a.m. on Monday, she might be in the soccer field on Tuesday, she might be over, they have 5 different zones that they work through. And the same goes with outside for middle school when they take their breaks. They have certain areas that they have to stay within, and there's no cross students, from different classrooms coming in to talk to another classroom. So the middle school, when they leave their classroom, they do wipe down their desk and tables and chairs for the new class to come into. And I think, this was very important. The maintenance staff use hydrostatic sprayers in each room in the evening to sanitize the classrooms. And that has been, to me, I think, a huge success for keeping all viruses to a minimum.
Something that I did not include on this slide that I should have is that early on in the school year, it was probably still in August, some student in Georgia took a picture of the hallway in the high school, and it was a packed hallway. Some students had on masks and some didn't, and it hit the media, and the student actually got suspended for taking that picture. But that picture of that hallway was really concerning to me. And as I thought about our middle school students, we are so fortunate because every single middle school classroom has an outside door. So our middle school, rather than transitioning classes in a crowded hallway, which if you've ever seen our middle school hallway during normal times, it's very crowded. They're transitioning outside, which serves 2 purposes. One, it gives them a mask break, and other, they are not in a crowded hallway transitioning between classes. So it was a huge benefit of the way our middle school is set up. And it just so happened that we could do that. There's aren't very many middle or high schools that can do that, but we were really lucky that we could.
Okay, requirements for isolation or quarantine. And this is very convoluted sometimes when you read it because it doesn't make sense. But this is what we're given, so hopefully I can help you make sense of it. So if a student displays a symptom at home or at school, they must either get a physician's note stating they can return to school, or they can quarantine for 14 days. If a student with a symptom receives a negative COVID test, they must still quarantine for 14 days. Same question I have, like if it shows negative, why would they not be able to go back? However, this is what the health department is telling us that we have to do. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm, if you get rapid tests, they're not showing as valid. So there's all that to look at. Asymptomatic students or staff members who receive a negative COVID test result still must quarantine for 14 days. Student or staff member with a positive test result must quarantine for 10 days from the first date of symptoms. And the way I read that last one, because you think, if it's positive, wouldn't it be 14? Well, they already had it. So for it to become positive, it started back here when they had the symptoms. So,
Yeah.
Julie, Jen, do you want to add to it? I mean, it's
So-
it's a hard one. You know, I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
walk you through it from what we are being told from.
Yeah. There was some chatter also on Parents Connect this weekend about that. So the last time I was on a conference call with the health department, I was fighting them on this. I said, that does not make sense. You know, it's counterintuitive to what you think. And they said, well, it's all about that incubation period before you test positive. They're saying, you know, you have to wait. If you've been around someone with COVID positive test, you have to wait 5 to 6 days to even register a positive COVID test. So there's a lead-in time to when you test positive. So it's like you've already quarantined for those lead-in days. So once you test positive, you've got 10 more days. Where if you have symptoms and you stay home for 14 days, that's the long incubation period, 2 to 14 days. So
No,
it's
it's muted. They can't hear you.
it's
I can't see
very
that.
difficult to understand.
Oh.
And yesterday they threw us another loop. So we had a close contact, not a student with COVID. We had a student that's a close contact to someone that tested positive. They have tested negative, and their doctor, that student's pediatrician, sent us a note that said that student could return to school. And we're like, oh no, you know, they have to stay home for 14 days. So, but the parent couldn't understand what, you know, I have a doctor's note. So called the health department and they said, no, we have to override the doctor. So we're the messengers in this big, horrible COVID environment. And now we have to tell parents that doesn't matter what your doctor says, the health department overrides that. And we just found out that yesterday. So it is very confusing, but we're getting there. Like I said earlier, we're kind of getting all the nuances now and figuring out things. So
We have one positive case.
just, you know, be patient with us. And
There is one positive.
basically, if I had a child, I don't know if I do have children, but if I had a child that I was wondering about, I don't know if I'd subject them to a COVID test unless there were other children in the house that you were worried about. But and that's a family decision.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm sure that's clear as mud to everybody. So for listening.
The next section we're going to talk about is our virtual learning in May of this year. So we were about, probably the very beginning of May, we were about a month and a half into lockdown, and it became really clear to us that this wasn't just a blip on our radar, that COVID was here to stay with us for a while, and that we would have to be looking for an option to provide virtual learning for our families during this coming school year at the bare minimum. So we meet quarterly in non-COVID years with another school leadership team over in Port Huron, and we all have many contacts in the education community. Reached out to several school leaders, and we found out a sewer. So that came back with great reviews. I'll just leave that right there for a minute. Let that sink in. That came back with great reviews. So we had to wait until July 1st to purchase the program. That's the beginning of our fiscal year. So we needed to, it's a pricey program. So I didn't have that in any of my line items at the end of the school year. So we purchased July 1st, and on July 24th, our staff, who is off in the summer, all agreed to do a virtual training in the summer on their own time, which was fantastic. And then the work began. So one of the reasons we chose Odyssey-ware, and if you've read any of my communications, you know that we're able to manipulate it on our end. It is a prepackaged program, but you can make any changes or create your own lessons. So it allowed us a lot of flexibility. And that was a big pro for us early on. What we didn't know is what we didn't know, quite frankly, until you begin implementation of a program. There was a huge learning curve for teachers and for our students and families. And for that, if you are a family who has utilized Odysseyware virtually, or you are utilizing it with your student through the school year, you understand those learning curves that have happened. So another thing we really liked about it was that it was completely aligned to Michigan standards, right? Because these programs are national programs. So we wanted something that was, had Michigan alignment. That was important to us. But as we ventured into Odysseyware, even with creating our own classes and our own courses for students, we heard loud and clear from families and from teachers that it wasn't the standard of instruction that Holly Academy typically provides. So we'll go to the next slide. Our young 5s and 2nd grade students. So originally, let me back up for a second. Originally, this was sold to us as a complete K-5 or it's a K-12 program. We purchased the elementary and middle school. Our understanding was with the young 5 through 2nd grade portion was through Spark. Once we got into that, it was very, very different than what we were sold. Our salesperson was really, really good at her job. Really good at her job. And, in hindsight and having conversations with our colleagues who recommended it, prior to COVID, they were using it for a very different purpose. So if they were using it for credit recovery for maybe high school students or students who couldn't be in the classroom for one reason or another, in those situations, it worked really well. As an instructional tool for us, it wasn't working the way we wanted. So the Spark was going to be inclusive of teachers adding every single thing that they do into that program. Most of you have had a young 5 through 2nd grade student already, and that's a crazy amount of uploading and creation, and quite frankly, it just wasn't worth what we were wanting to do for our students. So we scrapped that prior to school and decided to go with Google Classroom in our young 5 through 2nd grade. So 3rd through 5th grade students began the year with Odysseyware. Again, big learning curve. If you read the most recent newsletter, you see that starting second marking period in elementary school, we will be transitioning to Google Classroom in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and not utilizing Odysseyware. And the reason for that is because we can better align it to the instruction that's happening inside of the classroom. That's one of the things that I hear from parents is it looks different. Or why are my in-school students just using Odysseyware? Quite frankly, to start the year, we didn't know what to expect. Julie referenced that a few minutes ago. Well, like how long, would we be here? Would we be shut down? At this juncture, knock on wood, so far so good, right? But we needed to make sure our students were prepared to use an online program so that you all didn't have the same learning curve that we did in the spring. So that was why. Students already know how to use Google Classroom, specifically in those grade levels, and teachers are working on that transition. So if you have a virtual student in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, know that Odysseyware will not be part of their instructional methods during going forward. So this bullet's interesting. 6th through 8th grade students will overall remain in Odysseyware. However, I had a conversation with the ELA team, was that Monday? After school. And, sometimes as just a human being, you think you have a good handle on what's happening, and then you find out maybe you don't. They are using Odysseyware across the board, but there are a couple of teachers who have added some Google Classroom aspects at the middle school level. So it sparked an entire conversation with other subject areas, and much of our day, Julie's and my day yesterday, was spent figuring out with teachers exactly what and how and why there are Google Classrooms operating at the middle school level. So one of the big hiccups for us at specific to ELA is, so in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there are the ELA units on Odyssey-ware, but some of them, so 8th grade just completed the Little Women unit, or they're in the process of completing it, and that book is embedded right in Odyssey-ware. Well, you make some assumptions, right? As we started digging going forward, that's not true of all books. So then you're purchasing all of the books to align with the Odyssey-ware. So there, I will say that overall, it appears that at this moment they will stay on Odyssey-ware, but don't be surprised if some teachers make that transition to Google Classroom. Again, to make that alignment cleaner between what we're actually doing in the classroom, because obviously not to do any novel units throughout the rest of the year, that's not how we do things in ELA. And I say that as a many-year veteran of a middle school ELA person. It's important that they have those experiences through literature at the middle school level. So there may be a change to that. Please watch the newsletter. That will come out in the newsletter. So one of the other questions that we have received from families, and some students have emailed, will Husky Virtual Academy be available all year? Yep, it will be an option for you all of the 2021 school year. So we are not quite at the point to make the decision about going forward. I think it's too premature to decide what that looks like in the 21-22 school year. You know, look how much our world has changed in 7 months. I don't know that in October I'm ready to make a decision about what virtual learning looks like for our students going forward. How that will look, if it will go back to Odyssey-ware for strict virtual, and now that people understand what virtual learning looks like. So stay tuned throughout the year. You know, as we get closer to that decision, I will absolutely be communicating that through the newsletter. Families may choose to switch to HVA at any time. So if you are a family who is in person and you are preferring that your child go virtual, you can make that decision at any time during the school year. We would just like, you know, a few days notice. That helps on teachers' ends and people accounting end. But you can't go the other way. And I think we've made that pretty clear. So we did allow students to come in on October 5th. Our next round of students being able to re-enter to in-person learning is November 2nd. And that is simply a full-time learning. Our blended program is not open for new students, for virtual students coming back blended starting November 2nd. If you do make the choice, this has been the biggest struggle, I think, for everyone involved. If you do choose to switch to the virtual academy, know that it requires a significant amount of time and effort and detail on the part of students and parents. So we just finished, we are in the final stages of NWEA testing, which is required by CMU and required by the Department of Education. You know, we always do NWEA in person because CMU requires it, but we had to do it additionally this year for Department of Ed. We've proctored it in person with our in-person kids. We've proctored it virtually with our virtual kids. We've allowed virtual kids to come in and take the test. We've had our blended kids here and they were able to come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays if they were scheduled for testing. And it has been a huge process, quite frankly, just to get through all of the virtual testing. And the biggest struggle on our end is parents not reading communications that are sent via email or newsletters, or they have appointments and their students can't test. And that's really hard as a school for any level, you know, in non-COVID years when we're testing. And, you know, we always ask during the spring, please try not to make appointments during the day when your child's testing. This is added a whole different level. So if you have any contact with Mrs. Craven or Mrs. Price or Mrs. Fairbanks, or Mrs. Leonard or Mrs. Bunka, who are my in-building proctors, just send them a little bit of love, because they have done an amazing job of trying to capture all of these students in all of these modes of testing. And it's not been easy, but we're almost there. Another week. And that's all for me.
Okay. I am going to stop sharing. So this is question time for anything that was in the slideshow. And then we'll open up for anything you want to talk about.
Ms. Gildy, we had a question. How will that work in the winter? And I'm sure that has to do with the changing of middle school going out the doors. They will have their coats with them.
Yep, they're still going out.
Class, so they will just put their coat on. The coats will be probably behind their chairs.
And that's the same for mask breaks for our little ones. They'll continue in the winter.
Yeah.
It's Michigan.
The typical middle school child wears a hoodie and no coat all winter. And, you know, we're all at dismissal every day, and I'm always teasing them like, where's your coat? So hopefully they'll wear coats, but they are, our middle school kids are used to traveling back and forth anyway. They have classes up at the main building. Some of them travel twice. They travel to the gym. So we'll just continue with that. I'll get to you, Nicole, in just a second. So Elizabeth asked about the hydrostatic sprayers. The answer is yes. Now that we've paid a ton for them, we're going to use them, and we'll continue to use them. And they cut down, not only are they great for sanitizing the classrooms, but they do cut down on cleaning time as well. So if you've seen them, they're like, I don't know, the times that I've seen them other than at school are like, if you see how they clean airplanes, it's like that. It's that sprayer that they clean airplanes with. So yeah, so they'll really help us in normal times to keep during flu season or whatever season. So they really were they were expensive purchase, but they were a great purchase. Nicole?
Thank you all for everything that you have done. You guys are amazing and continue to be amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My question is, you know, it had been talked about at the beginning of the year that if Michigan remains in, I think it was like a zone 4 or whatever the wording was, you know, we would remain status quo, but cases are currently on the rise. And I don't know, with the governor not doing as much as she was able to do, will we know if we go into a different zone, or will you guys know, and how will that be handled?
Yes. So what has happened after the Michigan Supreme Court overturned the executive orders, the health the health and safety part of that defaulted to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So my understanding is that MDHHS will make that determination along with the governor, but she can't be the person that gives the executive order for it, but she can still work with the Department of Health and Human Services. And I was talking on Friday, we were visited by one of our RNs, and I was concerned because our cases in Michigan are rising. And I said to her, you know, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with, you know, do you have any insight into whether schools are going to have to be closed down? Are we going to go back to phase 3? Because our hope that we're in phase 4, that we would go forward to phase 5. But she said, as long as the hospitals have strong capacity, she does not see that happening, and she hasn't heard any chatter about us going backwards to phase 3. So we'll see, but the decision will be made in conjunction with MDHHS and the governor. Did that answer your question? Okay. Anything else in the chat?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms. Burns, did you have something else?
I was just going to read one of the questions in the chat.
Okay. Mrs. Barber asked, if a child's quarantined due to possible exposure, how do you ensure the education is not impacted? That's a great question. So in the case of our recent case that we had in a classroom, oftentimes the homeroom teacher may also be impacted. In this case, that the homeroom teacher was. So the homeroom teacher then is also quarantined and is reaching out to students who have been quarantined. Like if we are quarantining because of an exposure at school, that teacher is out, they will be working with those students daily. And that's what is currently happening. If it's different, if your child is quarantined because of an exposure outside of school, we will work with the classroom teachers will work with you to make sure that your child is on track.
So that's the beauty of all of our kids knowing how to use Odysseyware and how to use Google Classroom, because it's kind of fluid going in and out. And so I have a second grade granddaughter here and a 7th and 8th. And obviously the 7th and 8th graders are using Odysseyware. And I can tell you this because I'm telling you. I couldn't tell you about another student, but my granddaughter had to be quarantined, and she just defaulted back to Odysseyware and Google Classroom while she was quarantined. It was kind of seamless. Not so much for her because she felt like she didn't have to do work at home, but we got that figured out. But it would have been seamless if she would have immediately been in Odysseyware and Google Classroom.
So the next question was, what does the virtual program look like in Google Classroom? So one of the biggest advantages to going to Google Classroom is every teacher has Loom, which is a video program on their computer. So your students should be seeing math instructional videos posted. Math is currently already using Google Classroom in conjunction with Big Ideas, right? So the instructional videos are in Google Classroom, and then they go to Big Ideas to do their work. All teachers will have that ability, and the expectation is that when they're doing instruction, they will be recording and posting for the students in Google Classroom as well. So you will have not only the materials that you need, but you'll have some instruction and direction from the teacher. If you have a student who's virtual, it will mirror very closely to what both the math and Spanish teachers are doing in the elementary level.
Okay,
Does that answer your question, Mrs. Rusin?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Goldsleeve did say, I think Oakland County Health Department is also making decisions. So we obviously, our school resides in Oakland County, so we take direct instruction from Oakland County, which aligns with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So you are absolutely right. Oakland County guides us through everything health related. Any other questions? Or what do you want to talk about other than what was on the slide presentation?
Nicole.
So for next week's topics, or you were looking for suggestions,
Yeah.
I'm interested and intrigued to know how the NWE test results look, how they'll be dealt with, because knowing my own son missed that large bit of school last year, and his mom was his teacher. So let's just say I don't expect those results to be going up, but I'm just really curious as to how we're going to fill in the gaps, if there is any. I mean, our students are amazing, but how those gaps will be filled, if it's just with intervention or other measures. I have a curious.
Yeah, so we are kind of in a weird time, aside from COVID and all of the other things. So NWEA is a nationally normed test. Already they were in a renorming cycle. So we were anticipating new norms for the 2020 school year. Our last norms were from 2015. Because it's such a big norming process with millions of students, you know, they spend a lot of time on it. It was interesting as we got our new norms for this year, because then I didn't know with COVID if we would actually, if they would be able to have completed the process of renorming, but they did. So those norms this year are, in many cases, a titch lower than the previous norms, but that's over years of testing. So it's not a result of, you know, COVID directly, but it's interesting as students were testing, and I will be printing NWA scores and sending them home in the US mail in the next few days. They will, of our little ones came out of testing, you know, I wondered, right? Because if you were doing kindergarten, why does it say I'm muted? Can you hear
You're
me?
not, we can hear you.
Oh, that's weird.
Because I muted everyone.
As they came out of testing, it was really interesting to hear how well they were doing. So it was very promising. So you look for those scores to be coming home in the next week, and you will, you know, we will fill in, not just in intervention. You know, teachers understand that there was a loss of instruction and a loss of teaching in the spring. You know, it is unusual that we would ever have found ourselves in 10 weeks. Although I will say to you that I believe that what our Holly Academy teachers provided during this spring kept students on pace for learning in a time where, to hear friends and people I know in other districts, maybe that wasn't happening at the same level or to the same extent. So I think that will be to our benefit.
I'm going to piggyback on what Jen just said. So Friday starts our data drop cycle, and we have talked to you guys about data drops ad nauseum, but so we meet the admin team, the grade level teachers, any special ed teachers or an interventionist for that team. We meet for a half a day for each grade level, and we look at every single student in that grade level, where they're at, what we're going to do to fill gaps, if they're accelerated, well, you know, what we can do with that. So that starts Friday, and I think our last data drop is November 11th.
Yes.
So Mrs. Craven puts those together, and it's really amazing what we do. And we do that all the time after a testing cycle, but you know, it's even more important now to see where our kids are and to see, you know, how they fall in this new norming cycle, and what we can do for our students who have gaps in learning.
We also have a question from Metro Detroit. First of all, I need to tell you, your daughter is beautiful.
She's so
You're
cute.
looking at her. Her question was, my child is in kindergarten face-to-face. If we have to go virtual full-time, will there be interaction with the homeroom teacher? Absolutely, yes. Because at that point, we don't have anyone in school. So if you were with us last year, which you would not have been, our teachers go full-time with our students. That is their job. So yes, if we go all virtual, then that's what they do. So they will have interaction. They'll have, you know, reading groups when that starts. So yes.
I wasn't sure if her question was specific to just her family going virtual or school-wide.
She says, if we have to go virtual full time. Okay, I took it as school-wide.
Okay, everyone. So you answered her. Thanks.
It in some ways, and this is not going to sound good, in some ways it's easier. Well, in a lot of ways, it's easier to have everyone be virtual, because then the classroom teacher, you know, can teach virtually. But when you have some kids virtual, some kids in person, some kids blended, it's been a challenge. So I'll just leave it at that. Any other questions in the chat?
No, Alicia.
Yep, Alicia.
So going back to what you said, Mrs. Pottinger, about Odysseyware and the middle school students, is it like all of the subject areas are kind of revisiting that discussion, or was it just the ELA? I'm not sure I understood. And I guess the reason for my question is it seems like this year, and I sort of attribute it to the Odysseyware platform, the middle school students have a tremendous amount more homework, and certainly in some classes more than others, than we've had in years past. And so I'm just trying to temper that, because I've heard from families that are fully virtual, they're like, oh yeah, we're done by noon. And I'm like, oh my God, we come home, we have 2 hours of homework every night, because they spend so much time at school, like redoing everything that they've already done online. And I just feel like for the in-person students, I feel like there's maybe a disconnect or something, in terms of like how the time is managed in the classroom, and then again, coming home with hours of homework.
Julie.
Interesting you say that. Right now, I'm sharing a vehicle. And so this morning, I've got my 3 granddaughters in my car, and the 2 in middle school are talking about exactly what you just said, you know, that they were talking to each other. Well, I don't know why they don't know this. I guess they just squirrel themselves away in their own rooms at night. But, you know, how much homework did you have on Odysseyware last night? Well, I had this much. How much did you have? And the only thing that I would say is less of a burden is, you know, Mrs. Klimaszewski in a normal year has kids read 20 novels. This year, there's not so much. But other than that, I feel what you're saying. I think what you're saying is true.
Didn't last year.
Can you mute again?
So we need to meet with the middle school team and get that figured out. Because I see that Shannon is.
I made a note.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, and you know, I will make sure that that is, you know, conveyed in the newsletter. I can't promise you I have a final decision for Friday's newsletter, but definitely next week.
About homework?
Oh no, homework I can have, but she asked about is it different subject area, like who's doing Google Classroom? That I won't have finalized by Friday. Right. Homework we can take care of.
I just don't like, it's not a criticism, it's just an observation, really. Like, I'm happy, my kids are there, and it's good. I don't want you to feel like I'm like criticizing, but just an observation for sure.
Can I piggyback off that? I have a question about grades. And I know it is extremely difficult if a teacher updates grades and then your student redoes something. And, you know, so I understand on the teacher end. But is there a set, I mean, I just don't know. Is there like a general rule of when grades are posted? Because like, is it, I don't know, because my kids got grades in, they had none for September. Which, and I get all of it. They are starting to get emails from teachers saying, make sure you get your missing work in. And they're like, well, I can't see in Skyward if it's missing, if it's not updated, but do they mean Google? Do they mean Odysseyware? And so they're just sort of like, and that just adds more time to the homework. Like I have one kid who's always done by noon and one who's working all hours and to the evening. And so I can't say to them like, yeah, I just say email your teacher, and that's all I can do.
So there's not a specific, teachers are required to upload grades once per week. But if Julie and I are teachers and she chooses to have hers uploaded, you know, Monday morning, and I choose to upload mine Friday at the end of the week, you know, we haven't mandated that for teachers ever.
And, you know, I also feel your pain here because I'm experiencing it as well. And then if a child has a late assignment, it goes to the bottom of the stack of all the teachers' assignment. You know, if you have a late assignment, you know, it's not don't make your lack of planning my emergency, whatever that saying is. But I'm working with the middle school teachers with that too. Some of them are wonderful about uploading often. And just yesterday, Jen Pottinger and I were talking to a middle school teacher that uploaded 5 assignments in one weekend, and that took one of my students' grades from a really good grade to not such a good grade. So, and then you have to work through that process. So, sorry about that, but it is once a week that we tell them they have to update grades. So, we will also have a conversation about that.
Right. And I mean, it just the workload looks different, right? Big Ideas does a lot of the grading for, you know, it automatically assigns it. But and again, I'll go back to my ELA roots. If I'm grading, you know, 47 essays, that looks, you know,
Right.
it's different.
Yeah, I think it's just hard because if it's in Big Ideas, great, they know what they got, but how that translate into their actual final score, we don't know how they're weighted, or, you know, so we don't know, you know, is that homework assignment is not going to be the same as the test.
I got you.
Do you double click on the grade in Skyward? Because it does tell you the weighting. Like if you look at the grade and double click on it, it will tell you.
Yeah, it's the stuff they're doing that's not in.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
And, you know, we just do a lot of email your teacher and it works out.
So there's a way for the teachers to find out how many hours and minutes they've been working on each class. Is there a way for the parents to look that up? Maybe I just don't know.
No, but you could email me and I can send it to you.
Well, I'm having a problem with my son where he's, you know, on the computer for hours, and then the next day, none of that stuff shows as done, especially in Odysseyware. And I want to know real time if there's a way to do that. That'd be really nice.
Yeah.
There isn't for
Contact,
parents.
Darian is returning, right?
Yes.
Good.
But he's weeks behind.
Sure. Mrs. Potiker can get that information for you.
Yeah, if you send me an email, I can download it and scan it and email back to you.
Okay,
It'll give me it by day.
Yes.
Perfect.
Sweet.
There was a couple of questions in chat. Kim Harder asked, if we go virtual school-wide, then the virtual will be included with the homeroom class. They won't be segregated. Yes. If we are closed as a school because of COVID, our homeroom teachers pick up all virtual kids, and then our HVA teachers will work in support of those teachers. Melissa asked, is it possible for parents to get logins to Google Classroom and Odysseyware? One of her students won't show what they're working on or when it's due. So due dates are in the Google Calendar. There is a, by Monday morning, it's posted for all of the content areas, homework and assignments during that week. If you need that link, shoot me an email and I can send it to you. Or the easiest way is holleyacademy.org/ whatever grade your kid is in. So if it's second, it would be /2, 8/8.
I think that's one of the issues, is that that's just another place to go look. You know what I mean?
That gives you due dates and assignments per day.
Right, but there's not like one place to look to find out what's assigned and then when it's due and what they've done.
Right.
Sure.
Well, and with Isaiah, I can't log in and see what he's working on and if he's turned it in. And yeah, that's the student question.
So we early on, they told us we could do parent logins for Odysseyware, and we had thought that we would go that route, and then decided as kids were learning and teachers were learning not to go that route. And then as we are moving away from Odysseyware in the K-5 realm or the 3-5 realm, we, that becomes not an option. Google Classroom, not really. We would have to add teachers would have to go through every single parent's email and add every single parent. And quite frankly, sometimes that will clutter it up. And the reason I say that, because when parents post in there or parents email through their child's email, it gets, it just muddies the water. If you have a question, please email your child's teacher. Or now what I could probably do is get you his username and login for his Google account, and that will take you. rather than inviting individual
Yeah.
parents to it. So shoot me an email, Melissa, and I'll help
Okay.
you out.
Anything else in the chat?
No.
Any other questions? I'm trying to look at all of you.
I have a quick, just little bit to say, just thank you. I know somebody already said it. You guys have worked through the summer, have put countless hours in. Julie, like you said, sleepless nights. I just cannot thank you enough from our family. What you guys have done, the work you put in, you are trying to keep our kids safe. We just so appreciate it. And I just feel like I can't say it enough. So thank you, thank you, thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
All right. Well, on December 9th, we will talk in general terms about our test results for NWEA and anything else that you would like us to talk about. Think about it for a while. Just shoot any one of us an email and we will include that on the agenda. We have 30 participants, which is the biggest coffee and conversation I think we've ever had, other than when we switched to Common Core Standards in Michigan. We had packed house because no parent wanted Common Core Standard. But other than that one, this is our biggest participation. So thank you so much. Thanks for supporting us. You guys are super awesome. I love it when you stick up for us on Parents Connect. Thank you so much. We love you guys, and we're all in it together, and we will get through this crazy year. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.